All right, in this lesson right here, what we're going to be doing is roughing in the head. Well, the whole head or half a head?
Well, pretty much is half the head. We're going to create the entire head, both sides of it, by using a symmetry modifier later on.
Excellent. So go ahead and get started.
All right, well, here we go. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of survey my scene. You see what we've got. Pretty much we set this up last lesson with our 2 image planes.
Zach is a surveyor.
Yes, I am a surveyor. And we're going to...
Not do that.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to pan around in an orthographic view. But what I am going to do is go under my views here, and I'm going to set this to a back view. And you're going to see why here in just a second.
Yeah, it seems really kind of like, huh?
But yeah, it's really confusing at first, but it's gonna make everything remain very clear to you as we build this guy.
You're doing the number one thing we should never do.
And that is
clicking things without telling
clicking
them
things
what
without
it is
telling.
we're
I
doing.
know. Okay, well here's what we'll just kind of rewind in time, and I'll just undo that and show everybody what I just did. I have everything in wireframe right now, and that's all well and good, but that means I can't see what's on my image planes. So under the name of the view here, I'm going to right-click and go down here to Smooth plus Highlights.
Yeah, we know. We saw you do it.
There you go. That's what you're here for.
I'm just kidding.
Yes, I'm about to throw the stapler at Jason. Okay, here we go. And really, the reason I went to the back view is because as you can see, we've got our front view here moved back, so we got a nice open workspace, and now the grid is in front of him. What that means is we'll be modeling on top of that. And like I said, this will all become clear as we get along, so let's just get on with it. I'm going to create a box.
You mean you're going to actually create this alien head from a box?
Actually, Jason, I'm going to create this alien head from technically half a box, but that's not important right now.
Is there really such a thing as half a box?
Well, no.
Isn't it always
there'll be a box without a side on it when I'm done with it, but here, let's just start out.
I'll just be quiet and watch.
Sure you will. Okay, let's start out. We'll just go ahead and build this guy out. Lovely, nasty shade of green here.
As you will change the color for me in just a second.
Very quickly. And what I'm going to do is when I'm setting the height on this guy, I'm going to slide it over so that...
he was going to point at the screen.
I was trying to, I can't move the mouse pointer, so I can get my hand over here. Anyway, I'm going to make this cover the left side of his head.
He's looking up at his upper right viewport,
exactly.
the back viewport.
In my back view, I'm going to make this cover the left side of his head. It's so hard. I can't use the mouse pointer. I can't use my hands either. Okay, and just pan around to see what we got here. And I'm going to change the... length and width segments on this guy and hit
Change
F4.
the color to an easy blue or
okay, we'll put it to Jason's
easy
favorite
light
shade.
Blue or something.
All right, Jason's favorite shade of blue inside of Max.
That green was just killing me.
I understand. Okay, so we're going to take this guy. We're going to change the length segments up to 5.
So starting with segments in our actual model is kind of important, right?
Well, it's going to help us go ahead and get some initial detail in without having to go through the trouble of making cuts or using our slice plane.
Exactly. So in other words, it's not always a great... I mean, we could start out with a simple box with no detail in there and then just start making cuts as we need to. But, why do that? Because obviously there's got to be some detail. Because
exactly.
In the end, the character is not just a simple box.
Exactly. And, the first few times you model on your own without a very cool video to help you out, you might start out with just a box and no detail and put it all in yourself, thinking that it's more accurate that way. And in some cases, you're right. It's just after you do this kind of thing for a while, you start to realize it helps to have a little bit of detail in to get rolling.
You know what the user's thinking right now?
What's that?
Shut up and keep going.
That's exactly what they're thinking.
All right.
So we're going to height segments. We'll set this up to 2. And then actually we're ready to go ahead and right-click this guy and convert him over into an editable poly.
Now, why editable poly?
Actually, that's just going to make it easier for us to move. That's going to allow us to switch between all the sub-object groups as far as vertices, polygons.
Of course, we could have done those things with editable mesh as well, but the big thing is, there's some neat things that we have the ability to work with an editable poly, and we'll also be using NURMS as well as we dig through this, and you guys are going to see it's basically a subdivision modeling type method, where we're going to be using a low-res cage to affect high-res geometry.
Most knowledgeable student I've ever had. Okay,
Oops.
so...
Sorry about that.
So, once again, I am the hotkey guy, but I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing. I need to select polygons here, which I can do that by clicking over here on the polygons button out here under selection in the rollout, or I can just hit the 4 key, which is what I'm used to because that's a hotkey.
Is it really now? I'm sorry, keep going.
Anyway.
I didn't say anything.
I'm going to hold down the control key here, and I'm going to select all of the polygons here on the inside here and just delete them out.
And this is actually going to be quite important when he uses the symmetry modifier a little bit later on.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do now, and this is actually kind of a personal touch for modeling workflow. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a modeling texture. Now, a lot of folks don't like doing this
modeling
because...
texture or modeling material?
A modeling material, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay.
This is simple. In Max, you can actually use Control X and use the X-ray. See, at some points, I'm going to need to be able to.
Yeah, he didn't mean expert mode.
I meant Alt X and not Control X. We're not going into expert mode. Anyway, if you hit Alt X, you'll notice you go into X-ray mode, and you can actually see through this thing, which is very handy. It allows you to see the actual wireframe as well as a bit of your textured image, which means you're going to be able to model and see what's on your image planes at the same time.
But what Zach's want to do is show you another technique that gives you just a little bit more flexibility.
Absolutely here. So I'm going to make a new material here. I'm going to name it modeling, if I could spell properly.
Moogling.
Moogling. We'll call this moogling. And really, all I'm going to do, this is going to be an animated texture, is really all the only secret behind this. I'm going to turn on Auto Key. And I'll be changing my opacity values. We're going to set this guy up to frame 1. I'm going to set the opacity at about 55. And then we'll go to frame 2. And I'll set the opacity at 0. Now here under my timeline controls, my time configuration, I'm going to take the end time here and just set it to frame 2. This really turns my pretty much my entire UI, as far as my animation goes, into a modeling workflow, just to kind of help speed things up.
So now at the bottom he has a giant switch.
Right. So I'm going to turn off Auto Key real quick.
And apply the material to it.
And we'll apply the material to it. We need to go ahead and make this two-sided. That's going to help out later as we model. Now we've got our material on here. Let me close this out of the way. We can have a look at what we've got. We can now see the inside of this guy. And if we click on our time slider here and go to the next one, we can see halfway through this thing with 50% opacity, or 55 actually. And then click all the way over, and it goes almost completely transparent. That won't even render out. That's completely gone as far as Max is concerned.
Though you can see it just a little bit.
You can see it just a little bit.
Which is excellent. Okay.
Right. That's actually going to help us out a little bit as we move along here. So actually, let's get to some modeling. And I know everybody who's watching is going like, finally. So what I'm going to do here is, in my front view, I'm going to start off, we're just going to rough this out and get the general shape of this alien's head. And to do that, we're going to start off in the front view, and I'm going to go to my vertex subobject group.
Can you turn the grid off just so that our viewers have a little bit easier time seeing things?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I can do that with the G key, because I'm a hotkey guy.
That's right.
And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my vertex subobject group, and I can, once again, I can click the button, or I'm just going to hit the 1 key, because that's quicker for me. And we're just going to be moving these vertices around to get a general shape which pretty much covers the shape of our head here from the front view. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab these 2 bottom verts, and we'll drag them in this way, and we'll drag these guys in. And some of you are saying, why do you have 3 verts in the same place? We'll take care of that problem later. We're going to grab these next few guys. And really, what we're doing here is we're going to be looking for landmarks, places where we know that his geometry is going to be changing in a drastic way. So I'm going to start off with right here under his lip, because after his chin, his lip actually is going to jut out a little bit. We'll grab these 2 verts and move them in. We'll set the inside vertex here about halfway.
One thing I will point out, you'll notice as Zach goes in there and moves things along the x-axis, the one set of vertices he will never move on the x-axis when working in this particular viewport is the center ones on the center of the box where he actually cut away all the faces a minute ago. For the simple fact, if he starts moving these center vertices off, you want to go and see, these right here.
Yeah.
These will end up causing us some significant trouble.
Absolutely. We need him to remain perfectly symmetrical. And right now, these vertices, if you click on one, you'll see that on X they are at 0, and we really need them to stay there. If they get a little bit out of whack, we can either fix that manually, or we can go back and fix that later with the symmetry modifier. But it's a good guideline as you're working to try to keep everything as clean as possible.
That's right.
So I'm going to take this vertex here. We'll set it to about the corner of the mouth. If you didn't see, I grabbed this whole line of verts and pretty much brought it to the upper lip. So we'll use this as kind of a guideline when we're making the mouth. We'll move this guy in. You'll also notice as I'm selecting these guys that I'm not just clicking on it. I'm drawing a marquee box around them all. And that's because that's actually selecting all of the verts in the front and back as well.
And for those of you guys out there that are just picking up on this, verts is just Zach's high-tech, specialized, cool way of saying vertices.
That's just, it's a verbal hotkey.
It's just a cool factor.
Anyway, so I'm going to grab this guy here. I'm going to start calling him something else here in just a second to make me all self-conscious.
Sorry.
And I'm going to move him pretty much to the inside of the snout, and then we'll move him, this vertex here, to the outside. I mean, it doesn't really have to be exact right now. We're going to be tweaking things as we go along. Grab this next row of vertices, pull them down. I guess I'll just leave him pretty much at the center of the eye. We're not going to actually be modeling these eyes out themselves. The eyeballs we're not going to be modeling as part of his head. Those are going to end up being spheres that we're going to deform and actually fit into the eye sockets. So it's not really important that we put that in an exact location right now. We'll pull that in, and now for the top of the head, we're pretty much just going to pull this guy down, and we'll pull this vert out. Maybe pull this one up. And actually, that's going to be pretty good for now. Like I said, as we go along, as we model, we're going to be constantly tweaking things, constantly changing little things.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to hit Alt-W, another hotkey, to back out of our full-screen view, and then we'll go over here to the side view, and we'll just take a second and we'll do the same thing, but this time we are not going to move these guys in Y at all.
Okay.
We'll hit G again to turn off the grid. We're not going to move them in Y at all because we're going to assume that when we did that the first time in the front view that we got them where we wanted them in the Y axis. So now we're pretty much going to try to only move them in X.
So in other words, if you move them in Y, what you're saying is you'd actually mess up all the work you just did over in the front view.
On some level, yeah, you would be messing things up.
Exactly.
So we're just going to kind of move these guys in. Now, these verts here are going to play a bit of a special part later on when we actually subdivide his head. Right now, we're not going to worry too much about their location. We'll just go ahead and start drawing marquee selection boxes. You'll notice I'm selecting several verts at a time. We're just kind of getting a real general idea of what his head is shaped like. And what I'm going to do here is kind of different. See, the back of his head is really not all that complex. There's not a face back there or anything. So
just a big old melon.
Exactly. So what I'm doing is just kind of putting these guys in the right location they're going to need to be to complete that curve. So yeah, I will be changing their locations in Y as well, but that's not going to be important right now. We'll grab him, pull him out, and let's go ahead and we'll just take a second and we'll look at what we've got in the perspective view. And you can't see this too well, so we'll just...
And this actually allows you to see why he set up the back view at the top where he's working in that one. If you look at the image planes now in reference to the actual headpiece, it's actually the left side of the head that he's working on, and the image, of course, is from the left side of the head that was drawn out.
Because we switched to a back view, in the back view we're working on the left side of the head. In the left side, in the left view, we've still got the left side of the head, and in the perspective view, we've also got the left side of the head.
So yeah, synchronized.
Exactly. Just it'll keep things straighter in your head. So we've pretty much got this guy generally roughed out. I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to turn on NURM subdivision. I'm going to set the iterations up to 2. You can set them lower initially. I think 2 happens to look good when I'm working on.
And we've modeled the alien head into VTM.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. So actually, we've got a really good general shape for the head. I'm going to take just a couple seconds. We're almost actually kind of drawing to a close here, but I don't want to just end like this because you'll notice our head still looks really squared, like from the top and the bottom. Now I know we don't have a reference image from the top and the bottom. We're just going to kind of have to feel that out, but that really we're going to find there are tricks to get around that. What I am going to do is grab some of these verts here on the outside and just kind of pull them back to round this guy out a little bit. And I'll zoom in. In fact, I'll go ahead and make this full screen, make it a little easier to see what I'm doing. This is one of those times where it is completely safe to work in your perspective view. And you'll see that based on the wireframe, that is kind of rounding this guy out. We're already starting to get a nice rounded shape for his head. Now we got a couple of problems here in the back we can address. We'll just grab some of these vertices and we'll pull them forward. Maybe this guy here. Get some of that squarishness out of his head. And like a lot of these verts we're not going to need and we might end up killing later on, but really it's not important to go through all that much trouble right now. Okay, so we've pretty much got the general layout of our head complete.
That was the goal of the lesson.
That's really all we were shooting for. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this lesson to a close.
I will say this, if you don't mind.
No, please.
I'll just say a quick recap. Basically what he did is after we've got all the image planes set up, he just went with a box. And, of course, he could have done a box that covered both the left and right side of the head and then split it right down the center and simply deleted all the polygons from the left side of it if he wanted to. But he chose just to do a single box that was lined up, 0, 0, 0 in the center, then cut off those polygons on the inside. And then from there, he just simply went in there and started shaping it up using the reference. And once he got vertices pretty much in place, then he went ahead and activated NURM. So now we're using some subdivision going on in here.
Also, and I hope some of you noticed how our workflow was sped up by the fact that we already had some initial some divisions in our box when we started out. There was already some detail there.
Instead of us having to go in there and rather slice in new detail or cut in new detail.
Exactly.
So with that, now we're pretty much at this point. He did wrap it up by switching over to a perspective view, and in there you saw that he was not shy about going in there and then kind of moving around the vertices to actually start filling out the actual shape, the very general shape of this side of the head. So.
Absolutely. And when you get to this stage in any modeling project and you're thinking to yourself, this just doesn't look right, this looks ugly, don't panic right now. You are at the absolute earliest stage of the model. In fact, like right now, we can go and make some tweaks at this point. We noticed, actually, I moved that before I said what I did. We noticed that when we set on NURM's subdivision with the iterations and all, it actually pulled our new shape, our NURM shape, away from our image. So what we can do now is we can make some secondary tweaks where we grab these vertices and pull them back and actually change the shape of our NURM surface to more closely reflect our image plane. We can go through and we can do little things like that here at this stage. Absolutely no problem. Perfectly acceptable.
Like the front of the forehead up at the top.
Exactly. And actually, we won't be dealing. Excuse me. Won't be dealing too much with the front of the forehead right now because a lot of that's going to be determined by the eyes. But we'll go ahead. We'll pull this guy out, make it just a little bit closer. Maybe it looks like the head is now going a little bit too high, so we can grab both of these guys and pull them down. Make that fit a little more closely. And you see how this kind of becomes intuitive. You just kind of look at it and just you make it work.
And you did actually just bring up a very important point, and that was the forehead, how it's going to be changed because of the eyes. And technically that actually applies everywhere. As we go in and we start adding additional detail for the nose or the mouth or the eyes or ears or anything, it's going to end up changing the rest of just basically the way your high-res mesh is laying out.
Absolutely.
Of course, it's not changing the location of your vertices from the low-res mesh, but your high-res is being calculated different because there is more geometry being added in there. So you'll end up having to go back and doing tweaks all the way back around anyway. It's a very common thing.
Absolutely. And if there's somebody out there who haven't poly modeled before, especially in Max, this is a really handy way to get your smooth organic surfaces and still allow you to work with a low-resolution surface.
You got it. So with that, Zach, excellent. That concludes this lesson right here.
All right.